recovery, for one main reason.
The pharmaceutical industry is stunningly, staggeringly profitable. The 10 drug companies on the Fortune 500 list last year took in net profits of 18.5% on sales. That's 18.5%. That is stunning. The median for the other industries in the Fortune 500 list was a little over 3%, 3.3% of sales. And this has been the case for the last 20 years.
Given such stellar profits, would price controls really kill innovation? The claims and counterclaims go back and forth.
When government imposes price controls on an industry, innovation dries up. If you think of regulated industries, there is not a lot of new research and development. The pharmaceutical industry in the United States, because it's not been operating under price controls, is the engine of new research and development.
I know they have to be profitable to maintain their ability to do research and to provide a product, but they don't have to make the margins that they make. There's nothing written in stone somewhere that says, hey, they have to make 20% margins.
To shed light on this polarized dispute, Frontline asked two independent experts for their analysis. Princeton economist Uwe Reinhardt, a widely respected commentator on U.S. health policy, and Richard Evans, a drug industry analyst with the New York research firm Sanford C. Bernstein & Company, highly regarded for its unbiased financial reports.
I think as a society we've got two important questions here. One is, how do we make sure that everyone has access to the existing technology? And how do we make sure that we do that in such a way that we don't wreck our access to better technology tomorrow?
This is one of the problems with healthcare in general and pharmaceutical products in particular. The U.S. market at the moment is really the engine of innovation because we are willing to tolerate so far high prices, and that of course gives our industry, our pharmaceutical industry, the money to fund R&D.
So what would happen to R&D if we controlled prices as they do in Canada?
If we control prices today, then management is going to spend less on R&D, and we're going to get fewer products tomorrow. So if we want price controls today, we've just got to realize that we're a capitalist society. We finance these companies and control these companies and measure these companies through the capital markets. They're going to restrain R&D, which means we're going to get fewer products. It is an inevitable trade.
What would they cut? They wouldn't cut reasonably sure blockbuster things that may not be all that great in terms of what they actually do for people, but there's a big market. They wouldn't touch that. They would go after smaller niche products with high risk.
One such niche product is Lilly's life-saving drug for septic shock, Xigris, currently available at over $6,000 per treatment.
It was a very difficult drug to discover and develop. It's a very expensive drug to manufacture. If you didn't think that you were going to be able to set the price for Xigris, i.e. if you really felt that it was going to be set for you, I bet Lilly probably wouldn't even have developed it. Or let's take a Roche drug, Fusion, which was just priced in Europe at $22,000 a year. And it's the only drug for AIDS patients who have become resistant to other therapies. It's an exceedingly expensive drug to manufacture. If back in the days when you were just planning that drug, if you felt that you wouldn't have the ability to set that price, in other words, that price would be set for you, you never would have developed that drug.
So what will Maine Rx mean for the drug industry?
Well, if the people of Maine control prices and no one else does, it won't have much of an effect because Maine is not that big a state. If a lot of states did it and the revenue stream to the drug industry would go down, I think it would be crazy to assume that that would not affect research and development. It would.
In Maine, seniors and politicians acknowledged the issue of future innovation, but were more focused on getting lower prices today.
We're all completely committed to major advances in medicine and in prescription drugs. But this is the healthcare system. And you're not talking about a computer chip or a Rolls-Royce or some product which, maybe you'll have the right to make all the profits you want in the world. This is something that keeps people alive.
1 year on, Maine RX was still mired in the courts.
Pharma has unlimited financial resources, we know that, but we have great legal staffs and we have great arguments, and I think, we're in the right here. We're trying to make prescription drugs affordable for people.
On March 5th, 2001, Maine's appeal was heard by the First Circuit Court of Appeals in Boston. And this time, the court sided with Maine. But again, Pharma wasn't beaten. It persuaded the court not to let Maine RX go ahead immediately, allowing them to appeal the case to the U.S. Supreme Court. Observers everywhere waited to see what would happen.
If Maine were successful in the Supreme Court, I think 2 years later, you've got virtually every state doing the same thing.
Alarmed by the idea that other states might follow suit, Pharma, long the opponent of federal action, now started lobbying the U.S. Congress to pass a drug bill for seniors.
In this day and age, when drugs are such an important part of the healthcare system, to have the federal program for seniors not cover drugs just makes no sense. So we're urging members of Congress to enact a Medicare drug benefit.
Currently, drug companies have many private customers, like HMOs, and one big government customer, Medicaid. If Congress simply added a drug benefit to Medicare, as the Democrats proposed, government would then control, by some estimates, 52% of the drug market, and with it, the power to dictate prices. So instead, Pharma was pushing a Republican plan where federal tax dollars subsidized hundreds of private insurers, purchasers big enough to negotiate, but not to dictate drug prices. But observers were skeptical that Congress could reconcile two such different plans.
We have the deadlock that is sort of 50-50, which is paralytic, so nothing can happen. So I think this is, in fact, where the states have to take the lead.
Maine wasn't the only state involved in the prescription drug war. In the Northwest, the state of Oregon had a history of taking bold positions on difficult health issues, from rationing to euthanasia. Oregon's government realized that along with seniors, there was another group affected by skyrocketing drug prices: the uninsured poor, covered by Medicaid. This became the top priority of Governor John Kitzhaber, a former emergency room physician.
They're eating up the Medicaid budget. The size of the increase was stunning. Between the last budget cycle and this budget cycle, pharmaceuticals went up over 60%. As costs increase in the U.S. system, the way we deal with it is we squeeze people out. We deny access to other people. So the fact that these drugs were going up was resulting in other people not getting access to anything, like insulin, like penicillin.
Kitzhaber realized that if the state spent health dollars more efficiently, Medicaid would reach more people. But he believed that Oregon's current drug usage was riddled with waste.
I have a young man that works for me that had pain in his wrist, and he went to see his doctor and came back with a prescription for Celebrex, which is an enormously expensive anti-inflammatory drug. That costs about $75 a month. There's no clinical evidence to suggest that Celebrex is any more effective than across-the-counter ibuprofen, Advil, at $7 a month for an otherwise healthy young man with no history of gastrointestinal problems. So the difference is $68. $68 that contributed to the escalation in healthcare costs, but didn't produce a health benefit.
Kitzhaber believed that such waste was happening all over Oregon, and the only way to reduce it was to make people aware of the true costs and benefits of available drugs.
Instead of asking simply how we can finance this increasing cost, we should be asking, why do these drugs cost so much in the first place, and what are we getting in terms of health for this huge growing expenditure?
Out of these discussions, Oregon would later build its own drug bill, based not on controlling prices, but on maximizing value for money. But observers realized Kitzhaber had hit on a crucial point that was true for all Americans. As long as people remained ignorant of both the benefits and costs of drugs, there was little hope of controlling expenditures. The key was information. In pockets across America, there were growing discussions about the costs and the benefits of prescription drugs. That debate became central to the survival of this business, Fraser Papers in northern Maine. Fraser Papers employs over 1,000 people. Although the workers had health insurance,